Adventures of Superman, John Kent, issue 6, Tom Taylor writing with Clayton Henry on the art. Of course, Superman and Justice Superman is going to execute Batman and Harley Quinn, and Cyborg and Wonder Woman are telling him, hey, we got to go find this John, this other son of yours, because he might try and interfere. And Justice Superman's like, no, it won't come to that. Cyborg's built a teleport gun or something to boom him back to his own Earth.
Yeah,
that's his plan.
A vibrational cannon or whatever.
Yeah. So the issue from there though is John basically saying, I have to stop these executions. I'm not letting them happen.
Yep.
And he goes around all the various allies of this Superman, starting with Barry, and he just kind of appeals to him and basically says, hey, are you really comfortable with these guys being executed? And he's like, I heard your heart skip a beat, you're not. And basically asks him to stand down. And then just kind of deals with some of the others. He puts the Wonder Woman here on Titan because it'll take her too long to get back. It's just a delayer, so he's got time to do what he's going to do.
And he takes the lasso of truth, right?
He takes the lasso of truth from her to go and talk to Damian to basically say, hey, I'm telling you I believe in you, and I'm holding this while I say it, which means that it's true. You can be better than this. And it all builds up to this confrontation with Injustice Superman, where Justice Superman is not very happy that John has broke out Batman and Harley Quinn. He's very upset by this. And John effectively sort of gives him a lesson in what Superman is, and plays the message that Lois made for him here, talking about his kindness and compassion, and that's why he's a Superman. It's not the powers that make him a Superman, it's all these qualities that make him a Superman. And John's like, you have to pay for what you've done. Everyone has to obey these same rules, including you. And there's a moment, probably the best moment of the issue, where John goes all electric blue Superman. He's running in for a fight. You think they're about to have a showdown, and John instead hugs him and tells him he believes that he can get better, effectively. And it's the compassion instead. And I think that swerve, it's kind of it makes me think of back when we were doing Doomsday Clock, and we kept saying Superman's eventually going to be the one to win against Manhattan, but he's not going to win in a fight. It's not going to be punches. It's going to be convincing Manhattan to believe in people through who he is, through his nature. And sure enough, that's what kind of John does here with Injustice Superman.
He feels the compassion. And so I read this early in the week, and then there's, as Twitter does, there's so much controversy about it, and people coming after Taylor, and Taylor's so good at pivoting and turning these people's words on themselves. And I feel like if you feel like this is a controversial ending of John hugging this, it's not his dad, but let's just say this version of his dad, to appeal to compassion, that's a very Superman ending. And I feel like if you think that's controversial, I don't think you like Superman the way that you think you do. That was just my take.
I didn't hear about this controversy. This is completely unknown to me. I never had a thought in my head that there was anything
me neither. So I read this and I was like, this is how this ends, right? Is this Superman that has gone out of his way to conquer the world, right? And it's always this thing. They always talk about that's why Superman's not believable, because anybody with that much power can't be trusted, right? And this is that played out, the Injustice world, is Superman taking full control. And how do you defeat him? It's not through punches, it's through the compassion. And I don't think it's that controversial, but man.
Yeah, it's the combination of John saying he's sorry for his loss, but he needs to, he can't just get away with everything he's doing. Yeah. Hearing the message from Lois, which is basically this idea that his Lois wouldn't be happy that he did this. If his Lois was around, she'd be judging him for it. And it's right after this Superman breaks Jay's arm to just show how kind of vicious he is as a character. So it really sort of accentuates that. But I think the other thing I like about all this is that at the end of the story, John's takeaway when he's beamed back to his own world is that he kind of understands better than he did before. Because one of the big differences between John and Clark that we've pointed out in the last couple of years is that John is a Superman who's willing to get more involved in the politics of the world, where Superman tries to stay out of them, not because he doesn't have an opinion and doesn't care, but because he doesn't want to sort of exert too much control and become a tyrant. He doesn't want to be dictating to the world what their choices are. And John feels more comfortable doing it, but at the end of this story, he understands the fears that his father has, because now he's seen this other version of Superman who is taking complete control, who is forcing his law upon the land. And I think the fact that that's what makes this so good. It's not just that we see these different versions of the character story play out, it's that it actually affects John's own understanding of his real father, his real Superman. And that makes it, and
it's a learning moment for John.
Well, yeah, but it's like any TV show where you have like the stories of the week, and you'll have a guest star on, and it's their story technically, and then by the end of the episode, they've wrapped up their story and they leave. Good writing will always make that story about this other character. It's actually really about one of the main characters. It's actually about one of the characters who's always there. It will thematically relate to something they're going through, so it's always relevant. And I feel like that's kind of the same thing here, is that, yeah, you've got all these other universe characters that John's interacting with throughout this arc for the most part, but all of it's been kind of done to give him this experience to appreciate the real characters that we do spend time with going forward. So it feels like it's contributed something to the character and to the other characters and to the world that we actually do continue reading, which makes it more than just a gimmicky, here's some other versions to like have fun with for a few issues kind of thing. So all that stuff was good. I like the ending. I think the compassion worked. Obviously there is a tease at the end for a story coming up in November, so this was
feels like it's tied to that Beast Boy stuff, right? Like
seemingly, yeah. But it is nice to know that John's going to be included in something, because there was nothing really directly planned for him after this. So having this book end with this tease of him coming back to the world, something being wrong, he hears too much. He says it's loud. The world is loud. The people are screaming. What's going wrong? Something's wrong. And then it just says, to be continued in the adventures of. John Kent's adventures continue in Beast World, was what I was trying to say.
Beast World, yeah.
So
I will say that as the end of this miniseries, it's a little bit anticlimactic in not the story with Injustice Superman, because that was done, but where it goes, how they just beam him back with Cyborg's, vibrational cannon and whatever. I kind of would have wanted just this to end with, some wrap up for John, instead of just playing into this next thing. But I understand why they did it.
I mean, it depends to me if, we don't know who's writing all these books. If let's say there's a John Kent tie-in to Beast World that's written by Taylor, then I'll be like, okay, I kind of get it, because he's not done. Like, there's more of this to go, and we're kind of going to, I don't know, whatever that might turn out to be. Either way, though, I'm glad he's going to be involved, and given that that's a Titans focused story, it makes sense, because he's kind of that not lineage, because he's actually much younger than all those characters, but he feels in universe about the same age as a lot of those characters now.
Well, there's that, and he's real close to Dick, right? So
he loves Dick. There's no denying that.
He does.
And that wasn't just a joke because he's bi. Okay, that was just a good joke.
I was going to go with Grayson, is that is his mentor, right? So. Of course, he'll get involved in anything that he needs to. So, but yeah, if it's not Taylor, I'll feel like this is a bit anticlimactic for his arc on John. But again, it's comics. I understand you have to always move forward.
Well, I think I get what you're saying, but I think it only works if this is truly the last that Taylor writes for him. Like, I think is a satisfying story about him going to this Injustice universe, I think it's completely lands. I think it completely hits the mark. The only way it might feel like it's a bit weird is if it is just like the end of Taylor writing John as Superman, and therefore it feels like it's not much of an ending, I guess, in that sense. But what is there is actually really good. Like, I think the way he deals with this, and I've said this like almost every issue, but I think this is easily the best arc that he's written for John as Superman. I think it's better than all the arcs he had in the ongoing book that lasted 20 issues or whatever it was.
Yeah, because he has a solid understanding of John as a character at this point. So everything the stuff that happens before he gets hit with the cannon is very fulfilling for John as a character. So yeah. Yeah.
And I think, and you say he understands John as a character, I would go a step further and say he's actually molded who the adult or the near adult version of John is, because a lot of that has come from his run in this mini. So he's actually probably not just as important as, say, Dan Jurgens in creating the character, but I think he's like probably the next important name in terms of like contributing to who he is and what type of character he can be. So, you know,
I'll agree with that.
So, yeah, we haven't really mentioned the art. I mean, Clayton Henry's Clayton Henry. You know, we kind of say the same things. It's like, you know, it's nice and clean. But the foreheads for me, you know, it's they just sometimes I just don't like them. But it's just the way it is.
I get that. I like the not the actiony stuff, because the Wonder Woman stuff's not actiony, but like them going through space and stuff I thought looked really good. You know?
Yeah.
You know, so that stuff. The stuff at the end with the hug, and it does ramp up the action really well. Like him and Taylor work real well together build that tension. So
the layouts are good. Like John running towards them like they're about to fight and then hugging him. The layout, the pacing of that, so that when you turn the page and see the hug, the build up to it and then the reveal of the hug is perfectly paced. It's just how he draws heads. It's how he draws human heads that just doesn't work for me. And it's a pretty big thing to try and get over, because it's a lot of human heads when you're reading the comic book.
But yeah, no, this is a nice, you know, way to, you know, a safe haven from night terrors. You know, this book had been, especially this week when I needed it.
All right, what are you rating Adventures of Superman, John Kent, issue 6?
I mean, it was a straight 8.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think the heartfelt and the idea of like what makes you a Superman. You know, it felt like a big character moment for John, and him showing this compassion and sympathy for this Superman while saying, no, you can't just be allowed to do what you do. And I like, actually, one thing that I'll add on to everything we've said, is I like it leaves it ambiguous of like how much of an effect this has on Injustice Superman, because he's clearly affected by seeing Lois say these words from John hugging him, and then he's beamed away, and you don't really, like, I think we're left to hope that he's going to change and like answer for his crimes and like volunteer himself up and try and like fix the world that he's made, but we don't know. He might not,
right?
You know, but it leaves us in that little glimmer of hope that maybe John's broke through to him enough that he might change.
Conversely, it could be that he didn't go far enough, and he doubles down.
True. I suppose, maybe one day I'll revisit that universe, Taylor, to like tell more of the story. But if this is the last you see of it, I do think it's a nice little ambiguous moment of hope, perhaps.